Steve Gardner, always kind enough to join us. Does a great job covering baseball, USA Today. Good follow on Twitter. Joins us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Steve, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, Rich. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Let's get right into it. I saw the news of the day. MLB extends Rob Manfred's his contract extended through 2024. They also, I believe, they just signed off on a new television deal with Fox after a couple of days of meetings in Atlanta. So, again, here's a guy that took over Bud Selig a couple years ago. Now his new deal is going to run through 2024 regular season. When you look at the job he has done per se, and it's only been a couple of years, how about the state of baseball as a whole? You know, because I think a lot of people have gone back and forth. Attendance is down. No one watches. Ratings are down. It's not interesting. And I don't really buy into that because I'm a baseball purist. I'm going to watch all 9 innings. But how about the move with Manfred being extended, and where do you see the state of baseball right now?
I think, you mentioned that Fox deal, $5.1 billion over 7 years. I think that says as much about Rob Manfred getting re-upped as the commissioner as anything. The owners are fine as long as the profits are there and the money is good, and they don't want to rock the boat. I think that's probably the only thing you can say about Rob Manfred. He's been a fine caretaker of the game, but he's maybe pushed a few things and hasn't really gotten anywhere on some other things. I don't know, Rich. I think he really hasn't been tested, and I think what will happen is when this collective bargaining agreement is finished and we have to actually go back to the bargaining table with the two sides, then we'll see, what kind of commissioner he is, if he's in it for, the best interests of baseball itself or just in the pockets of the owners. I don't know that we can really make that decision right now.
It's amazing what happens when you win in sports, right? I mean, you got one of the lowest paid managers in baseball. That, of course, was Alex Cora, and then, boom, they win a franchise record, 108 games. They win the World Series, and now they extend it through 2021. So life is good for the Red Sox and Alex Cora.
Yeah, I tell you what, when you're the king of the world, it's good to be the king, as someone once said, and that probably describes Alex Cora pretty much right now.
Yeah, listen, I like him. I mean, I think he has a little bit of edge to him. I really do. And, the Boston Red Sox, we know what kind of shape they are, even going into the offseason. They'll always have money to spend. They'll be one of the clear-cut favorites to defend and win it again. But, I mean, he made $800,000 last year, so that's a nice little return on the investment if you're a Boston Red Sox fan.
For sure, and that makes you feel pretty good about going ahead and spending the big bucks on J.D. Martinez when you're not paying the manager that much. It was a very good hire, obviously, and I think he's one of those guys that you will see more of who has one foot in kind of the statistical world and one foot in the scouting world, and is able to blend the two for maximum production. And the Red Sox certainly had that this year.
Forget about voting. Put voting aside. In your estimation, in your mind, was Blake Snell the best pitcher in the AL?
Yes, without question. And, the fantastic ERA, again, below 2, and the 21 wins. You talk a lot about, and we talk about the National League, what is a win worth? Well, for pitchers that get a lot of them, I think that shows that they can keep their team in the game and they can pitch deep into games. And that's really what I think the value of the win is. And he had 21 of them this season. He certainly got some offensive support sometimes when maybe he didn't pitch that well, but most times out, he pitched awfully well and is very deserving, I thought.
Yeah, and I was double-checking this. I think he only pitched 180 innings, and correct me if I'm wrong, the fewest for a Cy Young award-winning starting pitcher in a non-strike season.
Yeah, and that I think that just says what the game is trending toward. We're seeing fewer and fewer pitchers reaching that 200-inning mark, and I think we'll continue to see that just because relief pitching is so good, and a lot of managers and front offices see what happens when you get the third time through the order, and only a few pitchers are good enough to be, better than the relievers they could bring in. that third time through. So I think it's a trend that's here to stay, and if it didn't happen this year, it probably would have happened next year.
Yeah, and you saw his development with that curveball was ridiculous. Recorded 93 strikeouts, the third most Ks with a curveball in the AL, only behind Morton and McCullers. I'm actually happy for DeGrom. I've pretty much advocated, Josh and I have argued this pretty much the last 2 months of the season. You know, we were always talking about, do you look at the wins? Do you look at what they really mean for the team? Is he getting the run support? I mean, at the end of the day, wins aside for a second, it's a 1.7 ERA, and the Mets never really helped him out. I mean, they just didn't.
Exactly. And the object of when you're pitching out on the mound is to keep the other team from scoring runs. And DeGrom did that better than anybody this season. You know, all those quality starts in a row, it was just phenomenal. I think there was some stat that for a number of strikeouts and fewest walks and ERA and all that sort of stuff, that he and Pedro Martinez were the only pitcher to reach the certain thresholds in the last 100 years. I mean, this was a historic season from Jacob deGrom, and he certainly deserved it.
Yeah, he did. I thought from start to finish, and it's unfortunate. Can you imagine how we would have looked at his season if he won 17 or 18 games? You know, you would actually put it with one of the all-time great seasons, at least for a pitcher in the NL. At least over the last 30 or 40-something odd years. But unfortunately, it's not going to rival Seaver or Gooden. You know, probably better than Dickey at the end of the day if you're a Mets fan. But I just think if you gave him a little bit of support, and then I think we're looking – his season was marvelous. But I think it could have been so much better because – you want to reward him, right? You want to reward the pitcher for going out there, and you want to reward him by what? Scoring the most runs and giving your pitcher some wins. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And listen, I thought Nola had a fantastic season as well. I really did, and I think maybe next year we see the same thing from Nola. Maybe he'll be right back in there vying for the award.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he improved so much from last year, and just learning how to pitch and put batters away when he needed to. And, you know, the one thing that the Phillies didn't have was a very good defense behind him. Just think, you know, if they turn more of those balls in play into outs, or at least league average next season, how much better Nola could be. And as for DeGrom, if he had gotten some run support, we could have been talking about a season like we talk about Ron Guidry, you know, back in the days with the Yankees, and how he what 27 wins and
27 to 3,
just ridiculous.
Yeah, 27 to 3. What was that? 77 or 78? I think it was his 78 season. Yeah, he was a fantastic pitcher. Give me a dark horse team that has the potential for Landon Machado, say $300 million.
Dark horse team. You know, we've talked about the Phillies. The Yankees are possibly in play. We don't know. Dark horse team. How about St. Louis? I mean, the Cardinals have been on the doorstep for the last several years. I think they need to make a big splash regardless. You know, whether it's trying to make an offer for Bryce Harper or Manny Machado or somebody else. You know, the Cardinals have been really, really good for an awful long time, and now the last few years just haven't been able to crack the playoff field. And I think this is an incident where you may need to go that extra mile because, you know, even dating back to when Albert Pujols was a free agent, the Cardinals were in play but never have gone that extra mile. And this is a team that routinely fills up its ballpark every year. You know, everybody, St. Louis. You know, we hear so much about the best fans in baseball. Well, they do support the team, and maybe it's time for St. Louis to step up.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at their shortstop. You know, you had the young kid DeJong, and I think he fractured his hand. He hits close to 21 home runs in right around 115 games. They can certainly use an upgrade at third base. You know, the Cubs, maybe the Cubs are playing a little bit of possum. Who knows? You know, you always look at the Yankees in the mix as well. Maybe Arizona. Hey, maybe Atlanta. Who knows? How about the realistic chances? I know there are some stories that have been written that the Phillies, it's almost a foregone conclusion. You know, just pencil it in right now. The Phillies are going to land Harper. Maybe not so Machado, but, you know, can you see Harper and Machado? I know we've talked about this ad nauseum. Can you see them both in a Phillies uniform or maybe just one?
I think it's certainly a stretch to think that of all the teams with all the money, that had made plans to get underneath the threshold of the luxury tax and all of that, that one team would end up getting both of those players. I think that's kind of a stretch to even think that might happen. But I have to think the Phillies are in play for either one of them, and it would not be a shock. I thought Machado would be a great fit for what Philadelphia is trying to do, and Harper too, for that matter. Yeah. So either way, I think the Phillies have to be in play because again they're on the cusp of that playoff contention, and they don't have hardly any money committed to the future that they can't go ahead and spend on either Harper or Machado.
All right, let me leave you on this. I was going to tweet this at you, but I figure, you know what, let me get on the air because it's just you go back and forth with the Twitter, and it's a waste of time. Listen, Ohtani and Andujar, is it a Yankee bias or was it more analytics?
I tell you what, you look at, Miguel Andujar was not a great defensive player, all right? And yes, Ohtani didn't have any defensive value either as a DH, but the fact that he did have such very good hitting numbers and contributing as a pitcher, I think those two combined put him over the top, even though Andujar had a great season. Gleyber Torres, I thought, had a great season as well. But in terms of what Ohtani contributed, I think the voters made the right choice here. So we can certainly go back and forth. All three of them were certainly deserving, and maybe in another year, any of them might have won the award. But this year it was just a tough field.
If Ohtani doesn't pitch, does he win the award?
Then, yeah, I think you're going to have to go with the guy who's played the most and contributed the most in terms of raw numbers, and that would be Andujar there. But the reason that Ohtani didn't get all the at bats is because he was pitching, and he had rest days on either side of his start. So it's definitely a tough call that could go either way.
All right, you are fair. You are fair and just.
That's what I try and do.
All right. I always appreciate it, my friend. We'll keep a watchful eye on what's going on. You got winter meetings and off season and hot stove and everything. And we'll certainly get you back on. Always appreciate it. And great job coming on every week during the season. Greatly appreciate it. Added a ton to the show. Always appreciate a couple moments.
Thanks so much, Rich. And always fun talking to you, too.
You got it, pal. Steve Gardner does a great job, USA Today, covering baseball.